Hello, and welcome to this presentation, Getting Started with the RTB2000 AM Modulation Depth Measurements. In this short presentation, we'll show you how to use a Rohde and Schwarz RTB2000 series oscilloscope and the trapezoid method to measure the modulation depth of an AM signal. This presentation assumes a basic understanding of amplitude modulation and AM modulation depth, as well as basic familiarity with the RTB2000 oscilloscope. If you're not already familiar with these topics, or if you'd like a brief refresher, you might want to watch the presentation Understanding Amplitude Modulation and/or Getting Started with the RTB2000 Basic Operation before beginning this presentation. To measure AM modulation depth, we'll be using the RTB in XY mode, which means we'll have input on two channels and two connections between our AM signal source and the RTB. We connect channel 1 of the scope to the low-frequency modulating signal, and channel 2 is connected to the radio frequency modulated signal. To enter XY mode on the RTB2000, press the Applications button and then select XY from the list of available applications. Next, be sure that both channel 1 and channel 2 are enabled. You can configure each channel manually, but in most cases you can simply press Auto Set to configure them both automatically. Assuming we've connected and configured everything correctly, our XY mode display should look something like this. On the right, we can see the two channels. Channel 1 is a low-frequency modulating signal, a 1000 Hz sine wave in this example. Channel 2 is the modulated RF signal. We can use these two displays to verify that proper signals are present on each of the two channels. To calculate AM modulation depth M on the RTB, we'll be using the so-called trapezoid method. The first step in this method is measuring the length of both vertical edges of the trapezoid using cursors. We measure the length of the right edge and call this A. We then measure the length of the left edge and call this B. We then use a simple equation and substitute in the measured values to get an AM modulation index of approximately 0.29. This is the same as an AM modulation depth of 29%. Let's end with a short review. This presentation showed how AM modulation depth can be measured on the RTB2000 using the trapezoid method. This method requires the RTB to be in XY mode, with channel 1 connected to the low-frequency modulating signal and channel 2 connected to the modulated RF signal. This should produce a trapezoid on the screen. We then use cursors to measure the two vertical edges of the trapezoid and plug those values into a simple equation to calculate the AM modulation index, or depth. This concludes our presentation, Getting Started with the RTB2000 AM modulation depth measurements. If you'd like to learn more about the RTB2000 or about oscilloscope measurements in general, please see the links in the video description. Thanks for watching.